Hey everybody, Nicole here with Food on the Vine, and it's February. It is the month when I start looking at planting seeds indoors to get a jump start on the spring season that really, our last frost here tends to be mid-March through even mid-April sometimes. So they're going to need a little while to grow to be ready to put in the ground to where they are not going to be frostbit and die. So starting seeds indoors is something that I want to spell it out in a number of ways the way that I do it. Now everybody has their little tricks and their little things that they've learned really work for them. Also per climate area of where you are. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, west coast of Washington. That's important to know also for your frost times in the fall and your thaw times in the spring. So there's a lot more to seed starting than you might imagine. Really a lot more, and I know that now because I've been gardening some 25 plus years. But it also can be very simple. So if you're a new gardener, it can be as simple as one little tray like this. I just want to plant me some lettuce this year, or just lettuce and kale, and it can be pretty simple, okay? But if you want to get a whole garden going, say 10 or more different things, or even 5 or more different things, as you expand your garden, it becomes a lot more of a process with some certain complexities with it that are really good to know about. So we're going to talk about that. And I've got some excellent seed mix here, and I will show you a picture of that in just a moment. There's some things that are important to know about looking at your bag of seedling mix, which you're going to want to get from your local nursery or hardware store. And your seedling mix needs to have some certain characteristics, in my opinion. So I'll show you that in a moment. And then these are some of the supplies you might use. So I'll talk to you about those soon too. So let's get started. Okay, so here we have a look at some of the types of containers that you can use to start your seeds in. The big one in the back I use more in the greenhouse, the smaller ones in the house. Then look at some of the things that I use. Okay, I've used these different kinds of yogurt containers, poke little holes in the bottom. There's a way to use, look at this cardboard food container. Now I'm going to do something with this that I'll show you that works really well. And it doesn't matter that there's a little food in there. That's not going to bug a thing, okay? Why use cardboard? Well, cardboard, here's another cardboard, has some benefits, also minuses. It disintegrates more quickly with water, but that's kind of what you want for a single season of seed germination and sprouting and planting, okay? So you can't use it the next season, but that's okay. You've got your harder plastics like these little seed trays. I save all of these. I've got tons, I mean dozens and dozens of these. And again, easy to label, because as soon as I plant my endive, boom, there's a label in it, okay? And you also have containers such as these. These work well. You can put holes in the bottom of those and use those to plant things. What's nice about these, of course, is you get the individual cells, but you do not have to have individual cells to do seed starting for your garden. Of course, when we start them in the ground, there's no cells. There's just planting the seeds. Okay, now the great thing about these also that I will show you is these guys just happen to fit inside of them perfectly. So this, if you do not poke holes in this, you keep this solid, it's a drip tray, okay? And the other thing that can work for that are, of course, the lids. The lid can do the same thing. You can put these in a lid and you get the same benefit for a drip tray, okay? And I'll show you more about that later, because once we get some soil planted in these. Egg cartons. You notice I don't have styrofoam egg cartons. You could argue that styrofoam is reusable. It's also really bad for the environment. I swear by egg cartons for legumes. Legumes would be beans and peas. Your legumes can be planted closer together, and they can be easily done in this tiny of a space. There are lots of things that will suffer if they don't have more root space than that. Your peas and your beans, pole beans, I like to grow pole beans more than I do bush beans, will do really great in here. One other thing you could consider potentially is like beets, because your beets, your beets you can just restart from a cell. Also, you have these cells here. So this gives you the cell effect without having to go buy anything. And what's great about these is then when the water gets, you're going to be watering these all the time. This is going to get really damp and it's going to get soft. Okay. Well, I start out with it cut across here. So here you can see some egg cartons that I've gone ahead and I've sliced through the middle. I just use a pair of scissors to do that, but you can also use a small knife. Okay, so they're both cut up, and that makes it easy so that after I have been watering the seedlings and they sprout, I can easily take out one of these, and just, peas can be planted this close together, it's just fine. And I can just put this in the earth right next to this one and just have my whole line of peas going. See, you don't have to take them out of the carton because the carton will be really soft and breaking down from all the water that your pea seeds have been receiving. And so you just leave them in there and just put the whole thing right into the ground. It makes it so simple. So you just take that whole tray, you just put it right into the ground, just like that. So I've got all these rows, I've got this many peas, which will be just fine for my first little batch this year. And you notice that I have them, I take the lid and I put it underneath to just give it a little more stability, because once these start getting wet with water, they're a little bit less stable, and with the bottom on there they seem to do just fine. It's not well enough to be a water tray because it can get the floor wet and stuff, so you do want to be sure you have something underneath of them if you're starting these inside the house. When I do them out in the greenhouse, I don't worry about it, but in the house, I will put down some plastic or something to be sure that I'm not having them leak. Now, I also love this about using these cartons is that it's so nice to just label, and I love to put the date. So then I know how many days these seeds have been trying to germinate, okay, and I can keep track of that to see if they're doing okay. And you can do it two ways. You can do it down in the front like that, which is pretty nice, but you can also do it in the back, which is also just fine. So that's your preference. When you purchase your bag of seedling mix, you want to be sure and look for this symbol, OMRI listed. That means that it's for organic use. Next, you need your seeds, of course, and I like to line mine up like this in order of what I want to plant. Another thing to get prepared before you start filling your seed trays with soil is to get your tags ready, so that the moment you have that little tray ready, you have your tag ready to put inside. Now here's some of my tags. I do have one other place where I have some. You can see how many there are. I reuse them. Okay, so this is a wonderful way to save some money and to have some conveniences. These labels are already there. I save them. I take them out after I plant the lettuce into the ground, for instance. Then I will take the lettuce tag here or here and add it back into my stash. And I just keep reusing them. If you another thing to do, like if you say you bring home a flower and it's on sale for $1.99, well, that other side is blank. So I write spinach on there. So I can use this to replant some spinach. And there's my label side. You can just reuse the back sides and use a Sharpie pen to do this with. It will keep it from erasing. Okay, and if you also need tags and you want some new ones, there's some, our local nursery has some little, you can buy like 10 of these for $1 or something. And then there's packs of these. You can even buy these type at the dollar store, okay, Walmart, whatever. And then these are just, I have tons of these that I've made from the back of a pamphlet, some kind of anything plastic. People have even cut up, I've seen them like cottage cheese containers. You cut the plastic up and create a tag like this. There you have free tags, okay? You'll need a container to mix your seedling mix in. I like to use these empty salad mix containers that come from the grocery store. They're free, and the size fits nicely in my sink. Okay, so the next thing you want to do, what I do, this is my favorite way to do it, it makes it so much easier, is you want to get this soil down here wet. Now, if you have one of these gizmos, it's the best. And I also do this with warm water. You see how that helps that soak in? You really want it to get in there because there's a lot of what's called peat moss in this, and the peat moss can be hard to absorb water at first. Okay. Okay, it's pretty wet. It's okay. You can't really soak it too much. I mean, the water's okay because it's going to drain out once you put it in your little seed trays. And why do I do warm? Well, do seeds like warmth or cold to sprout? I just figure it gives it a little extra push when I put that seed in there. Okay, so a few basic rules to know when planting your seeds. There's a basic rule of thumb that seed depth should be no more than 2 to 3 times the size of your seed. So look how small these lettuce seeds are. Okay, most of your greens, kale, chard, Brussels sprouts, all the kinds of lettuces, endive, tatsoi, spinach, they're very small seeds. And most green seeds, especially all your lettuces, they actually need light to sprout. A lot of people don't realize that. So you see here, I'm only putting a tiny bit of soil over those seeds, hardly anything. And then I'm just gonna wanna kind of press it in. Because if you're, a lot of times, first-time gardeners plant their lettuce seeds or their lamb's lettuce or kale or whatever just too deeply. And they say, well, the seeds were bad, nothing sprouted. Well, no, it's that the seeds had absolutely no light because they were planted too deep. So that's really important to keep in mind when you're doing lettuce greens and all your other basic cold weather crop greens. You just want to be sure you're not planting them too deep. If you've ever looked at the size of broccoli seed, for instance, it's teeny tiny. So 2 to 3 times as deep as the size of that seed is next to nothing. And I'll show you what I like to do often in planting lettuce and greens. As I'm showing you in this cardboard container, and I'll do this in a container that's big enough to do it in, as well as in the ground, is that I get my soil spread, bring my seeds in, spread them around somewhat generously. Okay. And then you'll see that I take a hand and I just sort of swish it back and forth, and that's it, and then press it. I'm not wanting to dump a bunch of soil on top of that because I need to let those seeds have some light so that they will germinate. One thing you may want to consider is some type of tray. This is a basic nursery tray, and I just put foil in the bottom. You could put saran wrap just to be sure that your seedlings, when you water them, do not drip water onto your floor or your shelving, say, if you have them on a wood shelf. You don't want that water to ruin stuff. So I like to use these trays. And let's get started now. We're going to start with planting some peas and move on to some other things. Now remember our general rule, 2 to 3 times is the depth you want, 2 to 3 times the size of your seeds. You see how I'm able to push these quite a bit deeper. Same with corn. You know, when you get later into your warm weather crops, a lot of those seeds are much larger, with the exception of pepper and tomato seeds. Here we have my light system. It's very basic. You see I've got one grow light hanging there. It actually has 2 bulbs, long full spectrum bulbs, a small heating mat, which I bought for $10 to $12 off of Amazon. The light cost about the same, depends on which light you choose, of course. And that's very simple. Not very expensive. I'm really into low cost. You also notice how it's placed. I have a very small house, 540 square feet. So you see how it just tucks under there. Okay, now we're looking at beets. One thing I'll say about beets and chard, both, the seeds look almost identical. Look at that. They come in a seed cluster of, say, there could be anywhere from 4 to 5 or 6 seeds in one of those that you see there, one of those clusters. They do like a little bit of warmth to get started. A little bit of warm water helps a lot. And they do well in clusters. So some people feel that they want to separate all their chards out and all their beets out, but you really don't have to do that once they're growing and you want to move them out to your garden. We can take a little hint from Mother Nature that she makes them seeded in clusters and they can grow pretty well in clusters. Here we are looking at our peas a few days in after planting, moving them from the hot mat. You don't want to keep your germinated, sprouted seeds on the heating mat for very long because it can make some damage and some misgrowth in your roots systems of your seedlings. So you want to rotate. And here you'll see how I'm even using my baseboard heater as a heating mat. It turns out baseboard heaters work excellent in place of heating mats. This used to be all that I used. I'd have all my little seedlings all lined up on my baseboard heater the first year that we lived in this house. And it actually worked surprisingly well. Okay, so you rotate, put your ones that haven't sprouted much on the heating mat, and the ones that have sprouted well off your mat, but still under that light. They still need the light, the replacement for the sun, since they're not outside yet. You could plant these peas outside if it was warm enough. It's still too cold where I am. So we'll keep them under the light for another while. Here you see some, now here we have some kale and some lettuce sprouts. You watched me plant these a little while back, and these, look at how thin and spindly they are, okay? That's not what you really want ultimately, but this is okay. You can remedy this when you transplant them. Part of that is due to distance from the light. A part of it has to do with seed crowding. A lot of it with those other ones. These are much closer to the soil, not as tall and spindly. You notice, well, the seeds aren't nearly as crowded, so they're growing a little bit better. So here we're going to transplant some of that kale to just show you how I tease out the very delicate little spindly seedlings. You gotta be real careful here because they can break very easily. This is the part where you really, really need a lot of patience. So if you can imagine all those spindly sprouts that you saw in the last image, you need to tease each one of them apart and place them each in an individual cell at this point in the game of seeding indoors. So these pea seedlings are ready to harden off. That's when you take your seeds outside for a small duration of time, like an hour the first day, 2 hours the next day, 3 hours the next day, exposing them to the elements, sun, weather, and then you bring them in. So it's tedious in a way because you have to go indoors, outdoors, indoors, outdoors before you take things out to the garden. Don't skip the step of hardening off. You'll be sorry. The sun will fry your newborn little seedlings. The wind will break them. They need to be hardened off to gain strength. And that concludes our video. Hope this was helpful, and happy seeding to you.